Cum vă spuneam, vom continua acum vorbind despre electromobilitate și viitorul industriei auto, în special în țara noastră, pentru că ieri a fost de altfel și deschiderea evenimentului Factory 4.0 de anul acesta, conferința din 2022, și pentru că am avut elemente și aspecte foarte importante menționate de către domnul Mujdat Tiriachi, am să prezint cu această ocazie și invitații acestui panel și speakerii. Așadar, Mujdat Tiriachi, Site Director for Otosan Craiova, thank you so much for being here. Adrian Sandu, Acarom, Secretar General Acarom, thank you so much also. Radu Burnete, Director Federația Patronală Concordia, thank you so much. Și Horia Todoran, General Manager at Bosch Rexroth, thank you also for being here. Adrian Sandu, because we will switch to English and it will be in discussion in English, I will let you to introduce the speakers and to talk about digitalization and also electromobility, because there are two factors that are very important also for our country, but our country is a little bit behind Western and European countries when we talk about transport and we talk about this industry.
Thank you, Teodora. It's good to be here together with you today, and I thank Marius for organizing this conference. We are partnership, you can see there on the slides, we are associative partners of this event, and I'm glad to be here with Mujdat, with Horia and with Radu. We are colleagues, we are working almost daily for the automotive industry. For those who don't know what is automotive industry representing for Romania, I can give you some figures. 30% of the national export, 30. 12% of the total GDP of Romania, more than 220,000 direct employees. And if we give a ratio of what is the importance of workforce in Romania, I can say that almost 4 workplaces in Romania are depending on the automotive industry. So around 1 million workplaces in Romania are linked with the automotive industry. And top 3 exporters from the Romanian automotive industry are, from the whole industry, Romanian industry, are from automotive, Dacia, Ford and Daimler. And one more figure, 28.4 billion euros turnover last year. So we are not behind Europe as automotive industry. Maybe we are behind some other states in Europe concerning digitalization processes, not in automotive industry, in administration. This we can say it directly, but we are doing a lot of things in Romania. And one of the things we are doing in Romania is going through a tough period, a crisis, and we are adapting. And the automotive industry at European level now faces a lot of challenges. One, as you mentioned, is going through electromobility. This is happening, this will happen, and this will be fully available in 2045, because this is the gap and the big step we have to challenge in 2045. And I'm glad to be here with Mujdat from Ford, which is one of our biggest investor in Romania, and now with the takeover of the plant in Craiova by Ford Otosan, I am sure he can tell us a lot about the plans of Ford Otosan about electromobility and the investment in Craiova. He also had a presentation yesterday, and I'm sure he can tell us more. So, Mujdat, can you say a lot about some plans of Ford in Craiova?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, really, for the opportunity. It's really great to be here with very valuable business partners. Now we are sharing the same stage, and I am very new in Romania, I should say, since July. I have been working, and yesterday was my first presence in such a valuable event. And considering electromobility, I think it's a very, how do you say, prestigious or really hot agenda topic at the moment, that there is no one solution or one size fits everywhere. We need to look at the ecosystem in each region, area, or whatever specific topic we have been talking on. So definitely the regulators, the big OEMs like Ford Otosan, or the suppliers and investors need to be acting hands in hands together, and all they need to be increase the awareness and start acting, especially in Romania, as you said. Starting from Ford Otosan, what we are doing on electromobility, actually our journey started with the Ford Custom PHEV introduction in Turkey. And it was a very successful car actually, and changed the rules of the market at that time. And then we announced the launch of battery electric vehicle transit. And then last year, we announced 2 billion euro investment in Turkey. So just putting the Ford Otosan's presence in the new trends, electromobility, and strengthening Ford Otosan's position in Ford of Europe in terms of electromobility, because it will create a electric vehicle production center, including its own battery plant as well. And in my previous role, before I am coming here, in April, we successfully launched battery electric vehicle transit, and it was again a game changer in the commercial vehicle area. Now you know Craiova. Next year we are going to be launching light commercial vehicle courier, transit courier for more commercial purposes, and also tournée courier for multi-purpose usage for passengers, etc. And in 2024, 2 years after this time, we will have both Puma and Courier electric vehicles in Craiova. So for Romania, it's just on time. We will be both passenger and commercial vehicles on the electric market. So it's a very strong message from Ford Otosan. And yesterday I have shown you that in 2024, Ford of Europe will be producing 9 electric vehicles, and 6 of them will be produced by Ford Otosan. It's another significant indicator of Ford Otosan's presence. Meanwhile, last month in Hanover, Ford Otosan introduced electric truck. Maybe you have noticed it as well. And for the micro-mobility solutions, we have introduced 2 wheels and 3 wheels electric motorcycles. We call it Raccoon. So almost from the smallest part to the heaviest one. So Raccoon, 2 wheels motorcycle, and then to heavy trucks, all electric vehicles, we are getting ready.
Thank you, Majdad. Nice news.
Thank
Good
you very
news
much. Yeah.
for Romania and for the Ford.
We are
plant.
ready to hit.
We're going to electromobility, but the question is, are suppliers also prepared to offer solutions, to offer joint capabilities? And I'm asking our colleague from Bosch, Horia Todoran, to answer this question.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to have a good discussion for the future of Romania. It was mentioned ecosystem. Yesterday in the conference, in our intervention, we also mentioned that it's known already to everybody, change will be the constant for the future. So if something will be and it's predictable, it's change. And indeed, from our point of view, Bosch Rexroth is a supplier for technology. Our components are in the lines of Ford and other main manufacturers, but they get there via one system integrator. So there are integration companies which build automation systems, lines, which produce or where you produce the cars or the other automotive suppliers produce their components. And if the industry changes, then we have to make sure that we can supply these lines according to your expectations. And unfortunately, here we lack a little bit of capacity, so there's still a lot of import. So this lack of capacity is being, or the gap, let's say, it's being covered by external companies. And even we got to the point where multinational companies build their own system capabilities as an internal department. So you have to produce further, and all the multinational companies, Bosch as a supplier also does the same. So you find solutions. What we did, and now it's a big discussion. Before it was a discussion about cooperation, collaboration, trust. So from our supplier point of view, technology supplier point of view, we try to train as much as possible. I'm glad to say that this event now has started 2018 by a joint collaboration of some technology suppliers, all of them present here. And it's good to see that now it's a national level, it's the third conference already, and it brings up important topics. But yes, we need integration capabilities to protect existing businesses. We need them to attract new business. So the ecosystem should be here. Katalin mentioned before, we should do something to attract. So yes, we have to do it. I think everybody's doing it somehow, but not in a system, in a structured, or with a structured approach. And then you have some results. What we know from our colleagues in Hungary, what the government did, they said, out of this reason to attract and protect, or let's say protect and attract, they said we want to increase the capabilities of our system integrators. And there were some funds where these system integrators, which at the end of the day are doing research and development, because it's a partnership, you want something, it's not from the shelf. They are doing research and development, and they said, okay, let's help them increase the speed with whom they do this research, so that we can be faster as an ecosystem, as a country, for all these international investments. Yes, money has been spent, but now they have the capabilities more and more to provide, let's say, the best services they can do. Just to answer, no, we are not yet fully prepared. We are all doing things. Maybe at the end of the day it should be a joint, I shouldn't call it meeting, but joint approach. There is the end user, there is the system integrator, and then there is the technology supplier, and see how we can solve your challenges with trust and openness, because at the end of the day, we want to be here, we want you to be here, you want to be here, so it's for us, for everybody.
Thank you, Horia. I know that for the new projects of vehicles, there are daily discussion between OEMs and the suppliers concerning systems to be integrated in the vehicles, concerning new regulations at European level that are in discussion or already adopted concerning communication, transfer of data, and everything else. But we also need some strategy, and when we are talking about strategy, I know that Concordia has developed a study concerning the future of mobility in Romania, and not only. Can you, Radu, tell us more about it?
Yes, thank you, Adriana. It's a pleasure to be here. We actually ran two studies this year that are relevant for this discussion. One was on the future of mobility and how Romania can achieve its 2030 targets, and we managed to align several industries on this. But I will tell you today about another study that we did that looks specifically at two sectors, the oil and gas sector and the automotive sector. And we tried to assess what type of jobs are in danger of disappearing because of automation, and what kind of jobs will appear in the next 5 to 7 years because of automation. And in the automotive sector, we did the study in Renault and Ford, so our two big automotive producers. We interviewed about 60 managers in these two companies, about 1,000 employees, and we looked at about 60 or 70 jobs. And I'll tell you a couple of things that were interesting from this study. The most interesting one for me is that if you ask employees, 68% of them are aware that automation is changing the nature of their job. But if you ask them, how many of them believe that jobs in their company are at risk because of automation, 5% believe that jobs in their company are at risk. So there's an interesting gap here. 2/3 of them understand that technology is changing their work and their company, and most of them think it's not going to affect them personally. Their job is still going to be there. So that's one thing. The other thing that was interesting is what kind of jobs will be impacted. And for the automotive sector, a couple of jobs stood out. One are the jobs that require a lot of patience. Computers are more patient than people. Another one were jobs that require visual acuity. Again, I guess cameras are much better than people at being very, very attentive, and of course, very repetitive and jobs that require manual skills. So what we concluded that if we look at least at the Romanian automotive sector, what jobs we expect to be, say, appended by automation are the ones related to quality control, logistics, and the ones that require a lot of manual skill. And now, looking at this, there's the people who say, oh my God, the robots are going to take our jobs. That's not the way I see it, and that's not the way we see it at Concordia. It's true that robots are going to take these jobs, but they're taking low-paying jobs, and they're not taking, amazing jobs. Ideally, we should have robots doing these repetitive jobs, and we should have people doing better jobs that also allow companies to move up the value chain, right? And how do we manage this transition? Because, okay, we did the study, we looked at it, it's happening, but looking at how you manage it, on the one hand, you have the companies themselves, and sure, the companies are aware of what is happening, and they have a role to play in training their current employees. But this problem is bigger than the companies themselves. The state has to do something, and this is where I fear we have a bit of a problem. We have a rather weak state, and not only that we have a weak state, if I were to describe Romania, we're more sprinters than long-distance runners. So we find it very difficult to throw anchors in the future and say, okay, in the next 10 years, we would need these kind of jobs, and reasoning back from that, how do you get there? What we tend to do is 1 year before is, oh my God, this is happening, let's fix things. And we're engaged in a conversation with our government. We have a national agency that is supposed to work with the private sector to prepare this transformation, and that agency needs to be reformed, and there's several hundred million euros in new money for this, and we hope to see it done. And there's one more thing I would say, and then I will pass on back to you. If I look at the role that the education sector should play in this transformation, we talk a lot about the skills people need when they enter the labor market, but I think there also needs to be a change in the mindset of our young people. And there's two things I would point out. One is we should no longer expect that we will have the same job for the entirety of our lives. So we should expect that after 15 or maybe 20 years, you need to reskill. And this is something that the schooling system and the education system needs to prepare you for, because it's not easy to accept that at some point your skills become so obsolete that you need to learn new ones. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, I think young people but also people who are already in the labor force need to be a little bit empowered to understand this digital ecosystem. It's like in a library. If you don't know what you're looking for, the system is not helpful to you. You know, you cannot browse through 2 million books. And it's the same here. If you do not understand, first of all, what kind of changes are happening and how they impact you, and if you cannot understand that, you know, you can access online courses or there's things that you can do to change your skills, then again, all this universe is not very useful to you, and you need someone to guide you through it.
Thank you, Radu. And coming back to what you mentioned before, in the automotive, we work under a continuous improvement process, and this is available also for our employees. When we will train all the time our employees. Acarom has now a project in development concerning the increase of digital skills in the employees of the automotive companies. So we applied for 300 training to train 300 persons, and now we have the request of more than 1,000 people to be trained in this project. So this is the awareness about going digital, but as you mentioned, it's not a problem only in the companies, it's a problem also in the education system. So we should train the teachers in the high schools, the teachers in the universities. There is no digitalization course in the universities in Romania at this moment. So we should make them aware that digitalization is already here. It will be more and more each year, and they should do something about that. I'm sure that each automotive company has a partnership with at least one university, at least from that region, but I think they have partners with more universities. And my question to you, to all of you, is the labor market and the workforce prepared to receive this digitalization? What can we do more?
Yeah, this is always yes and no question. So from Ford Otosan Craiova perspective, I should say it is one of the most successful operations in Ford of Europe. So our employees are doing more than they expected. On the other hand, we are looking for the future and trying to get ready for the future. One side, we are nervous or conscious if we are able to get those skills in terms of advanced automation or digitalization, or to produce some components for the battery electric vehicles, not the fundamental pipes or some sheet metals. But on the other side, I believe there is strong resilience in the market. And as an employer or regulator, as an important part of the ecosystem, if you put the vision there, and if you convince the people, then people are acting. That's my experience in my previous role. So it was in 2018 when we were recognized as a sample with Industry 4.0 applications. And at that time, whoever comes and tries to sell you a software, there was no evidence. It was not working. All have to be developed within the company. But the people were ready to move with you. They have seen the vision there, and there was a problem to solve. And from Craiova perspective, I believe there is a strong base there. We have a problem. It's not a bad problem. It's a good problem. We like to grow. We are increasing the capacity, and we are looking after launches of new commercial vehicle and battery electric vehicle. So there is a very nice, sweet problem there to be solved. And I believe the labor market around us actually will be acting and moving. We can talk about some disadvantages or some talent drain to Western Europe. In that particular issue, then we need to be looking for the long run. So we should continue to raise, educate, and we need to be accepting the reality that the Western countries will be getting from us. This is how the game is set up at the moment, and it's not easy to change all the economic parameters or policies in one day. But we have to be continuing to raise those skills. And coming from the automation point of perspective, I believe Romania should be the least to worry about it. If we were in North America or Western Europe, we could be worrying about automation will be creating some unemployed people. But there is huge opportunity here to grow. And so when you continue to grow with the new technology and digitalization, then you create more jobs for the people. Just the skill of the jobs is different, and that's another connection I made in the point. When people see the light, they are moving according to that light. And can I also make some comments when I have the microphone about the supplier point, or
Sure.
continue with the labor only?
You can continue,
Okay,
please.
thank you very much. And from the supplier point, Orao, you really did a very good point about it. So it's another awareness issue. So the suppliers, the OEMs, or even the individual employee needs to be aware of what's coming. And we strongly encourage as an OEM to move forward our suppliers. This is a serious issue. If they don't act today, then they need to be aware of that they will be out of the market. And unfortunately, we need to be looking for other opportunities exporting. But this is not the thing we want. As Ford Otosan Craiova, we like to have our suppliers around us as strong as we are and be part of that meaningful growth. And in that point, the regulators, everyone needs to be more, as you said, collaborating. So putting incentives for the better electric vehicle, we need to look at what problem we are trying to solve. Are we trying to increase the number of electric vehicles in the market only? Or we are also supporting our suppliers? Are we looking at the localization for those incentives? So it's a better electric vehicle, very good, sold in Romania, but if there is no local contribution in it, so that incentives goes to where? It is very good for the sustainability point of view, very good for the future generations, but we can put another measures to protect our local workforce, suppliers, and R&D as well in it. So that kind of things can be increased, I believe.
Thank you. Maria?
Yes, thank you. For sure, the topic is complex. Sometimes we should maybe also ask ourselves if our mindset is the right one, if we understand it right, so to be able to explain it. And I mentioned also a bit yesterday, we are still quite technology-centered. So there is, at least from my perspective, a feeling that we do industrial digitalization or digitalization maybe for the sake of doing it. So everybody has somehow an incentive, not social incentive, but we have to do it. But at the end of the day, it's another way of solving issues. In the past, there were other ones. Yes, it increases the speed, correct, and we have to understand very good the processes. We have to implement all the lean, or let's say the lean methodology, because if you have a process with a lot of waste and you start accelerating it, you just accelerate the waste, so it makes no sense. And the question also from our point of view, and at the end of the day, you're the end user, so it's which issues you have and how do we solve it with digitalization, with automation. And then normally it should not be an issue. Yes, the workforce has to be flexible, and yes, we have to understand that we have to be eager to learn new things and be open to it, because if everything changes around us and we're not, then we have a problem. And at some point it might be also difficult from all the parties, from government to companies, to help you, because the cap is too big. So yes, you will be exposed. But I would say, first, from my point of view, that I should understand it as good as possible, so that I can relate to it and I can explain it. And we, regarding digitalization, yes, there will be huge challenges for the labor workforce, for society, for everything. But at the end of the day, there are huge challenges. The question is, what do we look for? Do we look for the opportunities? We learned it yesterday from Ed. Do we look at the opportunities, or we just stay in the problem side and try to solve something which everybody by itself cannot solve it? So factory of the future is not something that neither Ford nor Bosch can solve it, so we have to sit together somehow and just look at the opportunities. So yeah, it's a challenge. We are in for it. And also a result again to this event, and we have to bring it to the next level. And everybody should do its part as much as possible. Thank you.
We mentioned workforce, we mentioned technology, but we also need cooperation with the authorities. So in your study, you also talk about infrastructure of charging vehicles, which is urgently required for electromobility. You cannot have electromobility without electric charging points. So what is the conclusion?
I mean, one of the reasons we try to look at Romania's 2030 targets from the industry point of view is because I remember we had a discussion 2 years ago when Fit for 55 came out. And we were more or less joking when the Romanian government will realize it has some targets to fulfill, and most people said 2029. And then we said, okay, what can we do about it? And we said, okay, let's look. Concordia brings together 16 sectors of the Romanian economy, and a lot of them are relevant for the future of mobility, be it the automotive industry, transporters, energy producers, and distributors. So we try to see how the industry would, if it were up to us to fulfill these targets, how would we do it? How much hydrogen, how much electric, how much freight, how much so on. So we have this plan. Again, what I said about the workforce is also true here. The most difficult thing for the Romanian public authorities is working on these future anchors. And you're right, for example, in terms of charging stations, that we've seen, to be honest, a significant increase in the past 2 years. I think 3 years ago, if you wanted to charge your car in Bucharest, it would have been an adventure on Google Maps to find out a charging station. Now, it's not that difficult anymore, so things have accelerated. But I think this is where we will continue to work with the authorities to try to explain that, sure, there's a lot of fires that are burning, there's a war in Ukraine, there are things that are urgent, but they don't need, and I think this is something they authorities can also learn from the private sector, because in the private sector you have, say, 85–90% of your people working on day-to-day stuff, but then you have 10% who are doing R&D and thinking about the future. And I think this is where our politicians and our public authorities have a difficulty to understand that you just need to set aside a couple of people. It doesn't have to be your entire department. They need to sit down and think about how we do these things, how we implement these strategies. Because if everyone's putting out fires, nobody is thinking about this. So yeah, this is a little bit of a challenge, but I'm hoping that things will improve a little bit in the following years, as everyone is talking about this transformation. And if maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was more of a theoretical theoretical thing, even for politicians. I mean, all this green transition and electrification sounded just somewhere up in the clouds. Today, you can kind of see it all around you. So it's not. They also realize that it's happening right now, and they feel the need to discuss more about it. I'm optimistic. Moderately optimistic.
I fully agree with you concerning the need for infrastructure, but I'm also talking with my other European colleagues from Poland and Czech Republic, and they said, you know, also our government promised us 100,000 charging stations by 2030, but now we have around 2,000, so the speed will need to be increased a lot. And you know, there was a study made at the European level concerning the required infrastructure for charging vehicles and the need for implementation is around 16,000 charging points per week in Europe. And now the actual speed is around 2,500 charging points. And there is another conclusion that more than 60% of the total charging stations are in only 2 countries of Europe, Germany and Netherlands, or Pays-Bas, how it's called now. So this is the actual figure. In Romania, I think we have another issue concerning charging station, the capacity of transport of electricity. There are in hold around 1.5 gigawatts electrovoltaic projects and photovoltaic projects at this point, because there is no transport capability for the electricity. So we should invest a lot also in these directions. They also said that at the European level there will be a need of around 60 billion euros investing in transport infrastructure for electricity. Around also, when we talk about electric vehicles in 2035, we'll also need 5G networks in Europe, because the cars will be more connected, the cars will be more more autonomous, and we also need this. We also need data transfer and huge servers in order to protect the data that is coming from vehicles. We also need a lot of regulations, and now we heard these days that the European Commission wants also Euro 7 to be introduced the next period. What should we do? What should we invest? Where should we invest first? In Euro 7 or in 2030, 2045? What can we do? We invest for a 2 years period, because when you want to comply with Euro 7, there are only 2 or 4 years maximum to use that vehicle. Then you can go directly to electric vehicles with zero CO2 emissions. So,
and if I may, Adrian, just one thing I would like to add about the challenges I see in terms of policy. I see you guys talking about charging stations. I see our sector in the energy producers. They're talking about decarbonizing energy production. I see our distributors discussing about new distribution networks and smart grids. I see the telecom industry discussing about the new 5G networks. What I don't see happening, and again, the state has a role to play to bring all these sectors together, is okay, what type of energy do we produce? Where do we transport it, and for what? Because otherwise we'll end up with a lot of charging stations, a lot of power being generated, but if you don't have the in-between, what do you do? And I also see a challenge here. We're not very good at integrating these discussions.
Yeah, we are missing these corroborated strategies at national level. I think some member states are used to receive only the targets from the European Commission and to implement it directly without saying, no, we have here our own suggestion, our own environment, and we should adapt this strategy to the current environment. And this could be a problem for some member states. For some member states, not only for Romania. There are also other states in these situations, but I think I'm looking with optimism. I'm an optimist guy, and I'm looking with optimism towards the future of Romanian automotive industry first. And I hope this year to reach again the level of turnover reached in 2019, which was a pre-crisis year, around 31 billion euros. I'm hearing a lot also about new investment. Ford already said they will invest. Also Dacia and other big Tier 1 suppliers, they want to invest in Romania. And this is proved also by the file with the state aid required by the companies. And the majority of them are from the automotive sector. So there are plans for Romania, but we should keep our competitiveness level at the highest possible, because we are in competition with other countries like Morocco, also Turkey, and Slovenia and other automotive countries in Europe. Okay, we have Russia-Ukraine war, which drift a lot the investment from that region to our regions, but we should keep in mind also that Russia-Ukraine war put a lot of pressure on commodity prices, material prices, energy prices, and logistic costs. So all those are increasing in the last period due to this crisis, and we had a lot of activities finding suitable suppliers in other regions of the world because of that war. So at this point, I see a good future for the Romanian automotive industry in the next years, thanks to the plans already announced, and I hope to see an increase of investment in infrastructure, transport infrastructure. We're not talking only about highways. We should talk also about railways, about the Danube. They can be used as an export highway to western parts of Europe, and also in communication infrastructure and Constanța port, which is now more and more important for this side of Europe. So I'm ending my speech here, and I want to hand over to Teodora for the final.
If there are any questions, but I think that we don't have so much time, but if there are so many questions from the audience or maybe from the online audience, if not, I think that we have to finish the panel. Maybe they have some questions for you during the break. After 2 more minutes, we will talk about the digital skills. 2 minutes break, and after that, we will continue. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.